Storm Grease. And we have some beautiful illustrations of a kid falling, a book falling off a tram, teddy bear, a flashlight pointing at something that looks like a zombie, and other zombies beneath. So let's begin. The first page has little skeletons, hands and skulls and bones. And also by Raleigh Jefferson, Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid. Raleigh Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure. Greg Heffley's Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Roderick Wool's The Last Straw. Dog Days, The Ugly Truth. Cabin Fever. The Third Wheel. Hard Luck. The Long Haul. Old School. Double Down. The Getaway. The Meltdown. Wrecking Ball. The Deep End. And here we have another simple and beautiful illustration, and I like the little lines behind, like wrote a notebook. Here we have these spooky stories: the changing, the prankster, ghost friend, the biter, the human head, the scanner, the cellar, the nap, the strain, a mummy. I don't know why this one is not with capitals. The science project, the medicine cabinet, the invasion, and the demon. So we've got some spooky letters here on top. Let's say, boo. Did that scare you? If it did, maybe you should put this book down and pick something else that's a little less scary. There are some good books about unicorns and puppies and other happy things that you can read until you're ready for a book like this. But if you like stories about skeletons and zombies and human heads, then crawl under the covers and turn the page. And if you get too scared, then you can always live in your parents' bed. But please don't tell them the reason you got spooked, because I really don't want them to be mad at me. I warned you. Okay, so this is definitely a child's book. But it's kind of fun. It's like Hocus Pocus, you know, the movie. So the first story is The Changing, and we have these spooky hands here that look like a werewolf turning, and we also have a moon here, but it's a half moon, not a full moon, which is odd. So let's see what happens. There was once a boy named Rowan, and Rowan was a happy child. He had two parents who loved him very much, and he had lots of toys to play with. Sometimes Rowan would bring his toys to school and play with them at recess, but he stopped doing that after he got bullied by some jerks. That made Rowan sad because he thought playing with toys was the best thing about being a kid, but Rowan's classmates didn't feel the same way, and they were always trying to act Mrs. Pennington, if you could please be excused to use the restroom. When Rowan got to the restroom, he took off his shirt and was shocked to see a single hair growing from the center of his armpit. Rowan didn't know what to do, so he put his shirt back on and returned to class. And when he sat down, he felt like everyone in the classroom could tell something was different about him, even Mrs. Pennington. And here's the little hair growing out of his armpit. When the final bell rang, Rowan ran all the way home. He knew his mother kept some tweezers in the bathroom and he couldn't wait to use them to pull out that hair. But when Rowan took his shirt off, he could see that it was too late for tweezers. So we have a full set of hairs here. Suddenly, hair started sprouting all over Rowan's body, and before long, he was practically covered in it. So he has in his chest, arms, legs, armpits. By now, Rowan was totally panicking. He went through his parents' bathroom cabinet to see if there was anything that might help, and he found something he thought would do the trick. A bottle named with a label, hair remover. But there is a reason kids shouldn't go poking around in their parents' bathroom cabinets, because 2 seconds after Rowan opened the bottle, he passed out from the fumes. I can't imagine what it smells like. When Rowan woke up, he was in his bed. At first, he thought maybe the whole thing with the hair was just a bad dream, but one look at his arm told him it wasn't. So he pulled his arm out of the covers and he sees the hairs again. Rowan's parents walked into his room and he was afraid that they were going to be mad at him for opening that bottle of hair remover without asking. But they didn't look angry at all. In fact, they seemed kind of happy. So here's Rowan in the middle, panicking, and his parents smiling. Rowan's parents said they'd been waiting for this day for years and it was time for them to have the dog. Rowan thought that they had already had the dog when his parents told him how babies were made. But they said this one was a totally different dog. His parents said that sometimes when a child turns a certain age, their body starts to go through a changing, and that made Rowan sad because he liked himself just the way he was. But now Rowan thought he knew where he was heading, so he asked the question that had been on his mind all day. Am I becoming a man? Well, that made Rowan's parents laugh, and Rowan felt embarrassed because it took them a long time to stop laughing. So we'd see them here laughing and laughing. After Rowan's dad wiped the tears from his eyes, he said Rowan was still a boy and he was a different kind of boy. And when Rowan asked what he meant by that, his dad gave him some bad news. You're a werewolf, son. Okay. This was definitely not what Rowan wanted to hear, but when Rowan's mom saw the worried look her son's face. She said it was a day to celebrate. Rowan's parents told him he came from a long line of werewolves, and suddenly the pictures on the staircase wall made a lot more sense to Rowan. This is actually cute, funny. The Rowan's parents gave him some more bad news. They said they were both werewolves too. Rowan started remembering clues growing up that should have told him his parents were werewolves, but he guessed deep down he didn't want to admit the truth. Like, here we have the clues in the illustrations. His mom shaving his dad, a bag, everything. This is little Rowan watching, and here we have them, well, driving on a full moon, and I'm not sure if they're changing into a werewolf or how things are into this story. So let's see. When Rowan started crying, he said he just wanted to be a regular kid and have a normal life. But his parents said a werewolf could live a perfectly normal life as long as they kept on top of their grooming and hid who they really were from the rest of the world. Rowan didn't want to hide who he was, though. He had always been taught to be yourself, and that's what he planned to do. But Rowan's parents told him they are ignorant people in the world who don't like anyone who's different. And Rowan knew exactly the kind of people his parents were talking about. And I'm guessing he remembered his bullies at school. When Rowan asked his parents a question he wasn't sure he was ready to hear the answer to. But don't werewolves eat people? Rowan's parents looked a little uncomfortable and said that was a subject for another talk later. But Rowan had a feeling he knew the answer to this question, so the next day he brought his toys with him to recess, and this time nobody dared to mess with him. So his hair, it looks like, grew out a little bit more, and everyone's looking at him, but they're not messing with him. Rowan's example inspired his parents to stop hiding who they were too, and from that day on, Rowan and his family lived as their true selves, and everyone else just had to deal with it. Oh, I think that was the end of the story. Then we have the prankster. And it looks like this little fella with a smirk on his face and those eyes is the prankster. In a little seaside village somewhere in Europe, there lived a man named Jasper, and everyone knew who Jasper was because he was the village prankster. Most of Jasper's pranks were pretty harmless. One time he covered the baker's car in gift wrap, and another time he filled the village's only phone box with popcorn. I said filed. So here he is, hiding and laughing, and this is the popcorn coming out of the phone box or the telephone booth. family members, and his mother neverly forgave him for gluing all her furniture into the ceiling. How did he manage that? But Jasper's most famous prank was the time he put the mayor's underwear up a flagpole, which everyone thought was pretty hilarious. Well, everyone except the mayor. And here he is, laughing. No, this is him. This is the rest of the village, I think. The mayor and his underwear. That was the thing about Jasper's prank. Most people thought they were pretty hilarious unless they were the one being pranked. Anyway, one morning Jasper woke up trying to figure out who he was going to prank next. He couldn't decide if he wanted the toilet paper. He couldn't decide if he wanted the toilet paper his next door neighbor's house or replace the baker's cream-filled donuts with toothpaste. The toilet paper thing felt like a lot of work, and it had been a while since Jasper pranked Jory's the baker, so Jasper decided he'd go with the donut thing for today. Jasper got out of bed and brushed his hair, then headed up the hill to the bakery, and on the way there he passed a few people he knew. He waved to Marion, the dressmaker, and Mickey, the cheesemonger, but neither one waved back. But he figured they were just as sore at him for covering their shop windows in mustard the week before. So this is him waving, and these people are ignoring him. Things got stranger when Jasper walked into the bakery. His friend Theodore, the shoemaker, was walking out when Jasper said hello, Theodore. And Theodore ignored him. And a few seconds later, when Marta, the librarian, walked in to buy her daily baguette, she walked past Jasper like she didn't even see him. When Marta went to the counter to buy her bread, Joris was distracted, and that's when Jasper made his move. He pulled the tube of toothpaste out of his pocket and grabbed the glass lid of the donut platter. Or at least he tried to, because when Jasper reached for the lid, his hand went right through. Jasper was so confused that he ran outside and onto the street. But what happened next upset him even more, because when he stood in front of the mirror shop, he did not have a reflection. Okay, things are getting interesting. So this is Jasper trying to see himself, and he does not have a reflection, which could probably explain why people did not wave back at him. Jasper realized that no one could see or hear him, and when he made a complete fool of himself, nobody noticed. Even when Jasper barged in on the Mommy and Me class at the yoga studio, everyone just kept doing their thing like he didn't exist. So that's him walking in, trying to make some noise, but nobody saw him. He also took his clothes off, but also nobody saw him. Jasper tried to talk himself into thinking he was a good thing, because if no one could see him, he could pull off some really epic pranks. Just then, a line of people walked past Jasper. There was Brom, his best friend growing up, and his first school teacher. I don't know how it's pronounced. Everyone was dressed in black and looked really sad. Then Jasper saw his own mother at the back of the line, bawling her eyes out. Everyone was heading into the church, so Jasper followed them inside, and even though Jasper knew no one could see him, he felt a little underdressed, so he sat in the back pew by himself. It didn't take long for Jasper to figure out that he was at a funeral, but he was still pretty shocked when he realized who the funeral was for. The preacher said the guy who died was toilet papering somebody's front yard when he got struck by lightning, and you probably already figured out that person was Jasper. So now Jasper knew the truth. He wasn't invisible. All this time he was dead. And he had to sit there while everyone came up to the front of the church to say a few words. Usually at funerals, people say nice things about the people who died, but all anyone could talk about was Jasper's annoying pranks. So people were complaining. For the first time ever, Jasper could see that sometimes he took his pranks too far, and he wished he could live his whole life over again and become a fisherman or a librarian or just about anything other than the village prankster. After the last person spoke, it was time for final goodbyes, and when Jasper's mom went up to the coffin, it was a little hard for Jasper to watch. Jasper had no idea what you're supposed to do at a funeral when you're the person who died, so even though it felt weird, he went up to say his goodbyes too. But there wasn't a body in the coffin at all. There was just a pumpkin with a face drawn on it, which kind of looked like Jasper. Then everyone started laughing at once, and that was the moment when Jasper realized he wasn't really dead and that this was all one big prank. Jasper was happy he was alive, but to be honest, he was annoyed that the other villagers got him so good. Besides, he had a lot of questions. For one thing, he couldn't figure out how his hand went through that glass donut lid at the bakery. Then Joris explained that his nephew was a whiz with technology and the whole donut platter was a hologram. And then Jasper asked why he couldn't see his reflection in the mirror. The guy who owned the mirror shop said he replaced the mirrors with televisions that showed an empty pavement. Then the people who were in the yoga studio said they almost lost it when Jasper walked in on their class. It turned out the whole village was in on the joke, and since pranking was kind of Jasper's thing, he had a hard time admitting they got him. Jasper told everyone it was a decent prank, but his were way better. Then the preacher said that this was actually a double prank because the day before a meteor wiped out the village and everyone in it. That meant they were all dead and everyone was a ghost. Well, this was the second time Jasper found out he was dead in one day, but this time he didn't take it as hard. Jasper always wanted to travel, and if he was a ghost, he could fly wherever he wanted. So he climbed to the top of a lighthouse and aimed himself towards Paris. every once in a while, Gabe did something that annoyed Rusty, but Rusty knew that even best friends can sometimes get on each other's nerves. Then one day something terrible happened to Gabe, and I don't want to get into the details because it's way too sad for a kid's book. Later on that year, Rusty was really sad because he missed his best friend, and even though Gabe did a lot of annoying things, Rusty knew he would do anything to spend just one more afternoon with his pal. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind blew into Rusty's room, and when he turned around, there was his best friend, Gabe. But he's very faint, so maybe it's a ghost. Let's find out. Right now, you're probably saying, oh, I guess Gabe wasn't dead after all, but you're wrong because this was the ghost version of Gabe. Gabe said he came back from the spirit world because he knew Rusty really needed him, and that kind of made Rusty feel bad for thinking about all the times Gabe annoyed him. But Gabe said now that he was a ghost, he wouldn't have to go home and they could hang out all night if they wanted. Well, Rusty was glad to have his friend back, but the thing about staying up late made him a little nervous because this was a school night and he liked to get to bed early. But Rusty didn't say anything because he knew Gabe would tell him he was being a goody two-shoes. Rusty said you should probably go downstairs and tell his parents that Gabe was back, but Gabe said that would spoil their fun and they should keep this ghost thing a secret. Gabe said they should just hang out and play video games like they did in the old days. But when Rusty handed Gabe a controller, it went right through his hands. It turned out since Gabe was a ghost, he couldn't touch anything, so he had Rusty play the game for him, which wasn't really that much of a fun for Rusty. X, Y, A, B, down arrow, you dummy. After a few hours, Rusty said he needed to go do his homework. Gabe said he was glad he didn't have to go do homework anymore since he was dead, and he kept talking, which made it really hard for Rusty to concentrate. Finally, Rusty put a soccer game on TV so Gabe would stop bugging him for a while, but Gabe booed the whole time and Rusty couldn't tell if it was because Gabe didn't like one of the other teams or if he was just making ghost noises. After a while, Gabe got bored with the game and he started trying to out his ghost powers like walking through walls, and that made it even harder for Rusty to concentrate on his homework. So this is him walking through a wall. Rusty gave up on his homework and told Gabe he needed to go to sleep, but Gabe said that was kind of inconvenient for him because ghosts don't sleep. Rusty got ready for bed and hoped Gabe would just float away to whatever it is that ghosts go to at night. But even after Rusty got under the covers and turned off the lights, Gabe kept hanging around talking. All Gabe wanted to do was talk about his girl named Kelsey Reed, who he had a crush on. Somehow Rusty fell asleep, and when he woke up, Gabe was still talking, and he kept right on talking while Rusty got ready for school. Rusty told Gabe he'd catch up with him when he got back from school, but Gabe said it would be too boring to wait at Rusty's bedroom all day, so he was coming with him.